Welcome to the Real Estate Secrets Podcast for healthcare professionals, hosted by Austin Hare and Nathan Palmer, who together have over 2 decades of real estate knowledge and investing.
Great. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the show. I'm here with Ken Kaufman today, and he's the CFO of Community Dental Partners. He has been with them for the past 5 years and has been retaining the title of CFO since 2005. And so a lot of experience in the industry, a lot of experience with this, and it's going to be fun to get to know him. So how's it going today, Ken?
Yeah, it's going great, Austin. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Really excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. Me too. So I know that you are facilitating the virtual summit, the EOS Summit coming up. You excited about that?
Yeah, I am. I got a chance to be involved in the Summer Summit as well and some other things in the past. And I love how people show up, just they're hungry to learn. This is an industry that is a little bit still in the Wild West format where there's a lot of consolidation happening and everybody's trying to figure out the best way to do things and organize things. And I found this conference is a great opportunity for people to hear from some of the leaders and some of the best and hear ideas and network amongst their peers in the different groups and breakouts that there will be. So yeah, super excited to be a part of it.
Cool. So how did you become CFO originally? What kind of life choices led you down that path? I mean, did you know that's what you wanted to do in high school? Were you entrepreneurial? I mean, talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'd say I became interested in high school in finance when I learned about the stock market, and I was interested in learning how to invest and those sorts of things. And I went to a year of college, and then I did a 2-year mission for my church. When I came home from that, I knew, okay, now it's time to buckle down and I've got to figure out what my career is going to be. And honestly, Austin, it was between education and business. I wasn't sure. I could have just as easily ended up in the education world. I'm so glad I didn't, by the way.
That's quite a difference.
Yeah, it's a huge difference. And so I ended up going to the business school at BYU. And then I had one experience because I've always been entrepreneurial, and I actually started a business right out of school, out of undergrad, and it failed. I mean, we're talking nosedive, flame out, and had to pay off some debts because got in a hole. And it taught me so much, I got involved with another entrepreneurial company, and we grew to over 100 million in about 5 years. Wow. It was just rapid, crazy growth. And I learned so much, and I really started to find my passion of what I feel like I'm good at and where I can add value in an organization. So that set me on the path of heading down, helping to run and build fast growing organizations. And I've just always fit in the CFO role. I didn't set out with that as the goal, but that's just where I find it can add the most value in companies.
Yeah, no, cool. One question that I like asking people in the show is, how old were you when you had your first entrepreneurial experience?
Yeah, my first one was right at the age of 16. I decided I wanted to umpire baseball games because I was really big into baseball all growing up. And you had to be an independent contractor, go and buy your own equipment. And, we were paid as 1099 contractors. And you got called to come back to different leagues and umpire different games if you did a good job. And so I learned really quickly, you've got to know who your customers are, and you got to show up and do a great job and apologize when you make mistakes and own them. And that was my first initial foray into entrepreneurship. And
you said you were into the stock market in high school as well?
Yeah, not with my own money. It was all play money.
Okay.
But yeah, as soon as I had money on my own, I started investing, and it's definitely a hobby that I continue to have today. Although I'm not one of those active traders. I like ETFs, I like indexes, I like low cost, but I have my own philosophies about the way I organize my portfolios.
Okay, cool. So very passive then. You just set it and forget it.
No, I mean, I check it regularly and okay. I'm thinking about it, but yeah, it's on more of a passive type of a game plan than it is a daily trade.
I kind of personally categorize people into 3 categories. Number 1 is like the passive investor, which is where, you only put it in like ETFs, you literally never touch it, or a 401k or whatever. And then the day trader is the guy who is like literally selling all out by the end of the day, like doesn't hold anything overnight. And the active investor is like, somebody in between. You're not day trading, but you're not just never looking at it either. You're kind of making decisions based on if you think it's overbought or oversold, or, you know what I mean? It's a little combination of the fundamentals and the technicals. I mean, is that kind of where you see yourself?
Yeah, I'm more toward the passive.
Okay.
In that realm then, yep.
Okay. All right. So your first business venture, that's out of college. You said it crashed and burned. What was it? What happened there?
Well, so I actually put myself through school in the financial markets. I worked for two different brokerage houses. And when I was done, I thought, hey, I can go out and I can bring all my own clients on. I can build an amazing business and they're going to think I'm amazing because I know all these amazing things.
And how did that go? What happened?
Yeah, totally flamed out. Because here's the thing in business, and it's true in dentistry and real estate, like whatever it is, you have to know who your customers are and you have to figure out how to connect with them and how to engage with them. I didn't know that. I thought if I knew everything there was to know about the world of investing, that somehow customers would just show up. And it doesn't work like that. And that was the kick in the teeth that I needed to get. And I needed to be humbled and be down a little bit and realize that I had things disorganized. You got to get customers first and build great relationships with them. And then you can deliver your great service. If you're the most amazing fill in the blank, if you don't know how to get customers and you don't know how to engage with them, you don't know what they care about, and you're not in their communities and thinking, the subcultures that they're a part of and mingling in those areas, you're just always going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So your first business venture has kind of failed. And then what happened from there?
Yeah, so I got involved with this other startup organization that grew really fast.
And in dentistry?
No, it wasn't actually. It was in employee leasing, kind of the HR world. And I learned so much there. I was given way more responsibility way earlier than a kid just graduated out of college ever should have gotten. But it was just because, I showed up every day. I was mostly dependable and the company was growing and needed to, needed its employees to grow faster than maybe they probably should have. So I learned a lot of things there. But the aha moment for me came because I'd see the four owners, executives, every Wednesday morning, they'd go into this room that there was all glass around it, and they would have their executive meeting. And I watched as some days they would argue with each other. Some days they would laugh. Other days it would be really kind of calm and chill. But every time they came out and they brought out great wisdom about where we should go as an organization and why and how we were going to do it and how we're going to tackle the next growth challenges. And Austin, this thing came over me. And it's when I realized what I was meant to do, I think. I watched that happen over and over. And then I started to think in my mind, I need to be in that room. I need to learn. I need to progress so I can be part of building and growing organizations like that. And I wasn't qualified to at the time. And I knew that. And that motivated me to go back and get an MBA, right? Seek out the opportunities that could help me potentially, build a career in business.
How long were you with this company for?
Just over 4 years, actually.
And how big were they when you started with them?
Under 10 million.
So they scaled from 10 million to 100 million in 4 or 5 years?
Yep.
Wow. What was your title by the time you left?
Oh, wow. That was a long time ago, Austin. You're dating me here. I think my title was manager of benefits, risk management, and something else probably.
Okay. Yeah. So it sounds like that was a case where maybe your values and your work ethic lined up more so than your resume or your experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because a lot of times, like, you might have someone who's qualified for a certain role model, but like their personality just goes in a different spot. So it seems like, or for a different job title. So it seems like they saw those characteristics in you.
Yeah, that's right. And I really am grateful for that. In fact, I did my own podcast episode yesterday where I was recording some of the things I'm really grateful for. And one of them is the chance that they took on me. This failed entrepreneur who was like down in the dumps and beat up because this thing didn't happen. And then I show up on their doorstep and they gave me every opportunity. And I jumped at it. I was hungry. And it's a little bit of the only thing I think I really brought to the table is I came with batteries included, as Dan Sullivan would say.
Nice. You had all the energy, huh?
Yeah. They just needed to point me some direction.
And did they know you had tried to start a company before and it had failed?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's cool because, when I ran the gyms that I owned a few gyms in the past, and when I was hiring people, I loved hearing like if they tried to start their own company because I realized that they had an appreciation for what it was. Because so many people, they're an employee and they've always been an employee, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. But you always think that you can do it better. That's human nature, and you always think, oh, like you don't understand how much money it takes to get started. You don't understand how much energy it takes, and you don't understand like how much of the revenue goes to the expenses. You know what I mean? And so when somebody has tried to run their own company before, they're a lot more appreciative and grateful for a company to work at.
That's exactly right. Austin, I'll add this to it. I always joke with those that are trying to be entrepreneurs or aspire to it. I say, look, in my world, there's only one criteria for you to be able to put the title of entrepreneur next to your name. And it's if you've ever had less than 5 days to make payroll and you didn't have near enough cash to get it done. That's the litmus test for me. You know what it's like, the stress, the pressure, the pains, and all the struggle to get something off the ground and get it going.
Yeah. I mean, cash flow, it's just, it's so hard. It's hard. It's not the hardest thing, but it's definitely one of the leading causes of businesses going under. You just don't realize expenses like accounts receivable and accounts payable and the timelines. I mean, they're very demanding.
So true. So true.
All right. So after you were done with this company, what was your next step from there?
Yeah. So I went straight from there to MBA school.
Okay.
Went to the University of Georgia, did an 11-month accelerated program. Game changer. Absolutely loved it.
And once you were done with your MBA, did you come back to this company? You said you want to be the person in the room. Did you ever get a chance to be one of those people?
Not inside that company.
Okay.
And it was interesting because, I opened the door, obviously had a great relationship with them and I opened the door, but it's interesting how sometimes you really do have to move on to the next organization because they still see you as who you were. And that time away from them and the growth and the learning that happened, I was a different person at a new level, but they still saw me in that old place. So it was the right time to move on.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. What was like your first job then once you got your MBA?
So I actually worked for a Fortune 500 company and went into their management development program. And It was Cintas Corporation. And so I went in and was on track to eventually become a plant manager or general manager. But Austin, it didn't last long.
Really?
I thought I should go that route, but the entrepreneurial side of me, it just didn't fit. So a change came within about a year.
Yeah. And that was, what, did you transition into dental at this stage?
No, almost.
Oh, no.
So I had a foray into construction. So I met somebody, we just became friends. We knew each other from church. And one day he said, hey, I want you to come over. I think maybe you can help out with what I'm doing. And I came in there and for a month, Austin, I learned and realized really quickly, nobody inside this company that was at the time about 30 million in revenue and growing to probably 45 that year. Nobody really knew what was happening with the numbers. I sat in a meeting where financial statements were presented and they were arguing about why they were wrong. And so really quickly, everything I'd learned, I'd gone through a bunch of system conversions and things, but I really quickly, this is where I found exactly where I fit because I could get in and really quickly dissect my way through, figure out, ask the right questions. And before you knew it, I turned those conversations from arguments to, no, actually, this is right. Now let's use this to figure out how to improve and grow the business.
And did your degree help you set you up for this, or is this just like a knack that you had?
It's both. It's degree. It's just kind of sheer will to figure things out and teach myself and learn and figure out as I went. And I think there's a propensity toward it. Again, it's why I'm grateful I went the business route, not the education route, because I'm passionate about it. I enjoy it. I love it. And there's nothing about it that scares me away. I just want to dive in and learn more.
And is that kind of like a common theme that you see when you were going through some of these different companies, is like the accounting or the lack of clarity that they have around their accounting?
Yeah, especially the smaller, so I was with this construction company for a couple years, and then I actually started doing consulting for that exact reason, because I looked around and I realized, hey, what I just...
Oh, sorry, we lost audio there for a second. Can you hear me? Hey, for some reason I'm not able to hear you. Are you able to hear me? Let me just make sure it's not my speakers. Hello, hello, hello. I can't hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Oh wait, there we go. I just heard you.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
That was interesting. All right. So last I heard was that you were uh, going to smaller companies and realizing that they had the same problem.
Yeah. So started to do consulting and started to help them get things organized in a way that they could look at their financial information and it would actually be instructive to how they can grow their business, be more successful. And that's when I got into dentistry. The very first organization I worked with was a mobile dentistry group. And I helped them kind of get themselves organized, get their financials cleaned up, and I've been in and around dentistry ever since then.
Wow. And that was, how long ago was this exactly?
So this would date us to about 2006, 2007.
Okay, great. So yeah, you had a long history in the industry. And then I guess that led you to your current role with Community Dental Partners, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of small pit stops in the middle. The one that would be worthwhile to mention is as I was doing consulting, one of the companies I started helping was the Arebex Nomad business. So Nomad is a very well-known handheld X-ray, handheld battery-powered X-ray device that is very common in the dental industry. It removes the need to connect your X-ray units to the wall. You can move it around from operatory to operatory. So I actually started consulting with them along with lots of other companies, but over time they actually had me come in-house and be the president and CFO of the organization. And we built that up and ultimately ended up selling it to what we now know as the Cavo Kerr Group in the dental space.
Oh, cool. So that must have been exciting to be part of that. You grow a company. Was it near the startup phase when you started, or were they?
No, not the earliest stages, because in med device, you've got a couple of years of getting through FDA approvals and everything with that. So I came on once they were into revenues and kind of needing that next level of growth.
That's cool. And I'm guessing you had stock options for when they sold it too?
Absolutely.
Oh man, exciting. Yeah, that sounds like it'd be a lot of fun. And
so that was a fun one. I've ended where I'm at now, which back in the days when I was doing consulting, the two founders of Community Dental Partners, actually another one of the founders, I knew all of them since 2006 when I was doing consulting, because they were running in the same circles and engaged in helping businesses grow. And we worked on specific projects and clients together on a regular basis. It was fantastic. And so the relationship led to where, they started Community Dental Partners in 2010. I was just finishing up and wrapping up right at the end of 2015. My most recent thing, and we reconnected, and it was the right time for everybody to re-engage.
Wow, good timing. So
fantastic timing, yeah.
What was Community Dental Partners like when you started with them? About how many units did they have, and was there things that you noticed right off the top that you could help them improve with?
Yeah, so at the beginning of 2015, which this was 1 year before I joined, they had 7 locations. At the end of 2015, they had 20. So there was rapid growth. And when I came in, there was some confusion around what was really going on in the business, what was happening with cash flow, and some of those kinds of things. And so the timing really was around, hey, can you help us kind of get some of these things organized and help us figure out exactly what's going on and get some tighter controls around cash and, some of those sorts of things. And that was the impetus. But we spent the entire year of 2016 and most of 2017 stabilizing the business after that rapid growth, really driving efficiency in each of the, individual units or each of the stores or locations, and setting ourselves up for the next step of growth.
Okay. So it kind of went like pretty moderate growth, extremely fast growth, and then kind of cleaning up, so to speak. Do you think that was the best strategy? Like, do you think that it worked out the way it should have? Or if you had to go back, would you do things differently?
Great question. I'd say I'm mixed on that. Net, I think we work out slightly positive, that it was on the positive side of, I think we'd do it again. We learned a lot. It was our first big acquisition. We learned that we're probably better at de novos than we are those types of acquisitions, at least the way that one was set up and structured. But we gained with it some new competencies and some vision to grow and expand even some of the things we were doing before. So there were synergies between the business model we bought and the one that we had been building up on our own. And I think we're better and we're stronger for it. I think we're much more resilient as a result.
Okay. And it sounds like when you came on and when they had the fast growth, that they're just growing at a rate that was hard to maintain positive cash flow. Is that kind of what was happening?
There's some of that. And then there was some misunderstanding about when you go through an acquisition, you can't expect that it will start day one after you acquire it performing at a level higher than it was before. In fact, usually with acquisitions, you get some hockey stick effect, right? Where it can turn down a little bit before things get integrated, right? You're changing practice management softwares, you're going through that. There can be a little bit of a downturn before you can get some of that hockey stick view or vision from there. And so
hockey stick is a good analogy, because I've priced that out before. It's like you grow till you can't, you reinvest. That's going to shrink your profitability, and then eventually you're going to get past that level that you were plateauing at before.
That's exactly right. And our CEO, Emmett Scott, he refers to that as the dark tunnel of entrepreneurship. And for those out there in the world building DSOs, which is what we're doing, there is a very clear choice where your earnings get high enough and it's tempting to just stay there. You have to take that dip in earnings so that you can eventually grow beyond where you were.
So that's kind of where you guys were at the time with the 20 locations?
Absolutely. Yep. It was the time to kind of double down and get ready for then the next stages of growth. And we got very excited about our de novo model. And so we now, in fact, next week we will be at our 32nd location.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
So what happened to make you guys shift from the acquisition model to the de novo model? And just for everybody listening, obviously acquisition means you're buying an existing practice, and de novo means you'd be building one up from scratch.
Yeah, sure. So like the value of the acquisition is it has existing cash flow, and so it's easier to finance as a result. It usually has an existing doctor, and so there's things that are kind of working and going in place. The downside is how well does that fit in and integrate with everything else you're trying to do? Like if you acquire 5 practices, are they 5 independent practices, or are there synergies among them? The de novo is dollar for dollar. It's always cheaper. Because if you have to buy a business at 4 or 5 times, you usually can build out and start one for 1.5 to 2 times. They're harder to finance because banks like to see a nice trailing 12 months of earnings and positive cash flow, and de novos have losses in their first 4, 6, or 8 months. But what we really like, because we feel like on our investment going into de novos, we're about a 2 times cost for what the annual earnings will be once it's all said and done. And so we ultimately felt like as well as we feel like we're good at getting patients. We've got a good doctor recruiting platform. And so the acquisition to pay that much versus, hey, if we can build up a practice, make it super profitable and pay half in cash out for that opportunity. And we really love our brand. We think we know exactly who our patient avatars are. So we find communities where there's going to be plenty of those that will resonate with us and that will fit within, what we're trying to accomplish from a standard of care perspective, that our clinicians are focused on. So that would, ultimately, that's why we felt like the de novo play was really where our strength was. So I would say doing the one acquisition maybe was the thing that taught us the most, that the greatest value we can provide and the greatest return on investment is probably on the de novo side. Yeah,
that makes sense. Because there's so much hype around roll-ups, and acquisitions and stuff like that. And maybe it's always been there and maybe I'm just new to it, but I see both sides of it, like I see the appealing part of it where it's like, hey, this is all this existing revenue. Like you say, you're making cash day one, you're making, positive cash flow. And then, but on the flip side, like you said, if there's not synergy, a lot of times, entrepreneurs can try and force synergies where there are none. And speaking of
that ends up hurting the whole business, right? Because if there's a practice that's doing well, they've got their secret sauce. And if you jump in and you try to change that too much and it's a lot different from everything else you're doing, it can cause some challenges. I'm sorry, Austin, go ahead there.
Oh, no, that's good. I was just going to ask you how would you define the difference between a roll-up, somebody who's trying to just roll up a bunch versus like a DSO?
Executive team. Tried, tested, proven. They know how to build systems. They know how to grow. They know how to integrate. They know how to lead.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And I apologize to be so short and direct, but that's it. Honestly, that's the difference.
And so, okay, 32. I know you guys are mostly Texas. Is there any one region in Texas that you're focused on, or just the whole state?
We're all over. I mean, El Paso, Texas is in a different time zone, and we have 2 practices there. Wow. It might as well be a different state, it feels like.
Yeah, right. Texas could be its own country, right?
Yeah.
And so,
Well, yeah, I mean, really, you have 5 different states inside of the state of Texas. If you look at the geographic and all the divisions of, rural into big urban areas and so on. So,
and you guys, you're about to have 32 locations, and I think your growth strategies, you said, are at least 8 more in in 2021. Is that what you're looking at?
that's right. Yep. 2021, we're looking at that. And we have a model with our associate doctors that once they reach, a level of maturity and growth in their professional capacity, as well as, their just overall, thinking of how the world works, we allow them to partner with us in these new de novos that we start up. And it's been a great model.
That's great. Yeah, I'd imagine at that growth rate, you're always looking for new talent, right, to bring on the team.
No question.
Yeah. So what are you involved in the site selection at all?
I am.
Okay. Yeah, because being realtors, obviously we love talking about that stuff. So
Yeah.
what are you guys looking for when you're doing site selection?
So we are very early on, we decided our business model was going to be to focus on the underserved populations. And initially it was around children's Medicaid. Because what happens in dentistry is dentists will credential with every single potential provider when they first start. And then they'll slowly start decredentialing from the lowest payers first. And children's Medicaid is a difficult business model. 1, because it's the lowest reimburser, but 2, the show rates are generally very low, say, 40, 30%, 40 to 35%.
Wow.
And so that causes all kinds of operational challenges, because over the month they can tell you, hey, our show rate's this, but hour to hour, it can be all over the board. And so it creates a lot of operational challenges. And we just decided we want our business model to focus on building the efficiencies that you have to handle all the complexity around the weird show rates, and also build a thriving, successful business that can drive the volume needed to overcome the decrease in revenue per visit, just because you're at the bottom of the stack in terms of payers.
Yeah. No, that's
so site selection now, as soon as you know who your patient is, site selection starts to get easy. I say that tongue in cheek because it's still hard. And we do occasionally have misses where we have some that don't do quite as well the first couple of years as others. And, there's certainly some disparity, and we're still even honing and refining how we go about this process. But once you know who your patients are, and remember that lesson I learned right out of school when my business failed?
Yep.
Once you know who your customers are, then you go and figure out how to engage them. And that's what we do with our dental practices, from the experience inside to where we put ourselves in the communities and where our focus is.
Yeah, that's good. A couple things that we like to focus on is just the retailization aspect of it, right? Because traditionally dental has always been office space. I mean, so healthcare has in general, it's just always been office space. And so, that's been transitioning a lot lately, and we've been trying to encourage people to take the leap, maybe pay a little bit more money and rent if it's going to help you get more clients. Because at the end of the day, what is your cost per client? And a lot of times people think, okay, well, I can't afford to pay twice as much in rent when I can go like back to this other place. Like, yeah, it's recessed, it's off the beaten path, it's not as accessible, but I'm gonna be saving all this money every month. But they don't realize is like, well, you are going to have to pay more than twice as much in marketing sometimes, right? Because at the end of the day, if you view it as a marketing cost, and then now, and your cost per acquisition, or you can project your cost per acquisition of new clients, at least you have a little bit of an apples to apples comparison to help make a more informed decision. And looking at the competition is another thing that's really important too. Like we love doing competition evaluations and site selection evaluations for our clients, because sometimes people, and I'm guilty of this too, when I had my gyms and my businesses, I remember thinking like, there's really no other competition. Like we're very unique, we're very niche, like we're so different, we don't have competition. But like everybody has competition, to an extent. And so that's another thing that is important to go through and evaluate, so you can look through that lens to really find and make sure that you're getting that best location, because that affects everything.
And Austin, isn't sometimes the competition, it's not necessarily the gym down the street or the dental practice down the street. Sometimes it's the friction that you create in the entire patient process. And so our mentality, I mean, when you think about it, dentistry only engages about a third of the population every year in the United States.
Wow.
Only a third. And you know what? That's like one, 2, 3 times higher than the whole rest of healthcare. because dentistry actually has this amazing recare cycle of, hey, come back and visit us every 6 months. When was the last time you had a doctor say, hey, can I set up an appointment for you in 6 months or 12 months? They don't. It's all reactionary. There's so much friction in the process that we believe that's honestly one of our biggest competitors. Yes, there are other dentists and dental practices, but if we could get 10% more of the population to go to the dentist, that would fill up all of our practices more than we could ever handle. So we like to think about it in terms of how do we reduce friction and get people to engage more in oral health.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were kind of some of your influences? I mean, do you have any books that you read that really stood out to you, helped shape who you are?
Yeah, it's a book. It goes back to when I did my undergrad and got my business degree. It's The Goal by Eli Goldratt. It's old school book. It's written in story format. I like those. I can keep up with those a little bit better maybe, but the whole purpose of the book was to teach the principle of the theory of constraints. And it's a manufacturing setting, but at the end of the day, every business has constraints. Every project, every initiative you're trying to do, you have constraints. And if you are so excited about a project and you ignore this constraint and you go build up a bunch of inventory over here, you're wasting time and money because you've got to get through this constraint first. I'll give you an example. Let's say we decided we're going to build a de novo. And a constraint comes up of, well, there's no site in that location. Like there's no good real estate option where we want to be. We could still be investing and trying to figure out how to get there and doing all these different things. But this constraint has to get solved before you can start getting patients, for example, attracting patients and building out and growing and building a practice. So his book teaches the theory of constraints, and that you find out what is the one thing that's holding you up from moving forward. You attack that and you solve it. And then another constraint's going to come up. Because once you solve that one, now something else in your flow and system is going to become the constraint. And so we actually in our organization, we talk about it a lot. People will ask me, what's the one book that you'd recommend? I always say The Goal, because I feel like in business, once you understand what's called the Herbie concept, and I'm just putting it out there. So if you haven't read the book, go read it. You'll figure out who Herbie is. Once you figure out the Herbie concept, it's empowering when you walk into a business and all of a sudden you can see things so clearly that you didn't see before.
That's great. Well, I'll definitely drop that in the show notes. And I also like asking people their biggest influences in their life growing up, even in adulthood.
Yeah. I'd say, first of all, my dad was a great role model.
Great.
He worked hard. He wasn't home that much. But just him not being home sometimes was the message I needed about what you have to do to go out and, in essence, what wouldst thou have from life, then pay the price and take it. He set that model and that example for me. Another role model and hero, I served a 2-year mission for my church, and the gentleman there, his name was Trent McKittrick, who was my mission president. Just an amazing man. And I had a chance to get to know him and interact with him on a personal level on many occasions. And he was a massive influence in my life. And then I'd look around at who I'm around now, because I love what I do and I love the team that I get to work with. And the Emmett Scotts of the world, the Chad Evans of the world. I look up to these men that I work with and the women that I work with, Jody Evans, Norma Romero, Amber Nish. Like these are amazing individuals. And I learn from them every day.
Wow. That's good stuff. And, yeah, I love that. My father is a great influence on me too. And really, we're pretty lucky, these days, unfortunately, the divorce rate is so high to, some people don't even know their father. So yeah, it's one of those things, you don't have control over it. You don't help it. You can't help whether or not they're in your life, but if they are, what a blessing, what a blessing to have that. So, and then, where do you see the economy going from here? You guys obviously have an aggressive growth strategy. Are you worried? We just had COVID. We've kind of, for all intents and purposes, it seems like we've recovered pretty nicely. Are you worried about anything leaning on the future? Or are you pretty bullish, pretty optimistic?
So in the short term, I have no idea, Austin. Okay. We in dentistry, October was a tough month. November is turning out to be tougher.
Wow.
There's the lag of recare because April and May, most practices were closed or very reduced. And so the 6-month recare cycle of October and November, when those patients would be coming back, we're all feeling the pressure of that. War chesting cash is super critical right now because month to month, we don't know. We had a bigger September than we've ever had by a lot.
Wow.
And September's usually not a big month for us. Usually August is. But guess what? September beat August this year. I can kind of explain what happened there. So for me, it's about war chesting. So you're ready to take on a couple of tough months until, you get your receivables back up and you start collecting on them. I'm very much though up and to the right. This American economy, it's driven by entrepreneurs. It's driven by innovation. These are things that can never be commoditized and never simplified. And we're just, we will always be an up and to the right eventually country. And so I see it that way. And then in healthcare, people will always have teeth. People always have healthcare needs. And our country is one that puts a big emphasis on that. And so I see healthcare continuing to grow as a percentage of GDP. I see innovations that are going to hopefully help people take better care of themselves over the time, from oral healthcare all the way through the entire systemic healthcare system. And up and to the right is where I'm at.
Yeah, that's great. I agree. Innovation, and technology. I mean, those types of things are constantly increasing the quality of life and the quality of healthcare that we get, and their life expectancy. I mean, all those types of things. I mean, we have more leisure time than ever, right? Mm-hmm. As humans, the cost per calorie is lower, than it's ever been, if you want to look at a unifying metric. And
that's a great one.
I think obviously everybody has their own opinions about the presidency and how those affect. I think either way, we're going to continue to go up and to the right, like you said. Of course, we're going to have corrections and stuff like that, but ultimately, I mean, the population is growing. Innovation is alive and well, and like Warren Buffett says, you can't beat the American spirit has never lost. Like the American entrepreneurship has never lost so far. So don't bet against America, right?
That's exactly right. Couldn't agree more.
Well, great. And so, for anybody who likes what you're saying, they want to get in touch with you. Maybe they feel like there would be a good fit with your organization. Is there a place they can reach out to, a contact, anything like that?
Yeah, sure. So my email address is just kkaufman@cdp.dental. So you can feel free to reach out to me there.
Okay, cool. Well, I will drop that in the show notes for sure. And I look forward to seeing you speak at the virtual summit this weekend.
Yeah, well, I look forward to being a part of it. And Austin, it's been an absolute, this has been a fun ride doing this show with you. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Hopefully we can circle back in the near future, maybe a year or so.
Sounds great.
Awesome.